Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to our Shape Your Future session. This is part of the Careers in STEM webinar series being brought to you by the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. We call it ATSE. I am the CEO of ATSE, my name's Kylie Walker, and it's a real pleasure for me to be joining you wherever you are around the country from Ngunnawal country, here in the nation's capital. You can see behind me a piece of art called Naniyal by Linda Darpani. She's from Northeast Arnhem Land, and I keep it here because it reminds me every day as I come to work that we live and work and are incredibly privileged to be part of a society in a country which has been continuously inhabited and has been under the continuous custodianship of the first scientists, engineers and technologists for more than 60,000 years. And I want to, before we do anything else, pay my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from across this beautiful land and the islands that surround it, and their elders in the past and present. And of course also say hello and a respectful welcome to all of those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who join us for the event today. It really is an incredible thing to be able to live and work in a country where we have 60,000 years or more of original knowledge system that persists and is relevant today and into the future. And I think it's going to be a terrific conversation today to learn a little bit more about how that is being brought to life in new and exciting ways. So I guess a little bit about me before we start. I work with the learned fellows of our academy. There are around 900 of them, and they live and work all around Australia and the world. They are the top scientists, engineers and technologists in Australia, and it's such a privilege to be able to work with and learn from them every day. They're the people whose work is changing the way that we live, the way that we learn, the way that we study, the way that we play. And of course the way that we work, and I work with them to not only provide expert advice to government and decision makers so that the people who are running our country and making the big decisions that govern our lives are informed by the best available evidence. We also work together to support people like you to learn science, technology, engineering and maths, to engage with it, to get excited by it, to see a potential future in it. And we support people through series like this one and programs like our STELR program, of which the Shape Your Future series is a part, as well as opportunities for mentoring and internships and scholarships to go to university. So we have, every day we have interactions with people throughout what we call the STEM sector, right through from early secondary school up to the very end of and pinnacle of their careers. So it's a pretty incredible job that I get to do. So I am here to lead the session today. I'm introducing your speakers and I'll help you get your questions answered. So please, if you have them, make sure that you interact with us because that way you'll get the best out of this session. We're here to help you and I hope that you hear something exciting and new and interesting that really kind of gets your attention. Before we do go ahead, I do need to remind you that everyone who's joined us today has agreed to behave respectfully in this event. That is part of our code of conduct and it is a very important part of the work that we do. And that includes the way that you interact with the Q&A channel. So please make sure that whatever you do, you are respectful. I do want to remind you that this session is being recorded. And then to ask when the questions do come. You don't have to wait until I prompt you. You can pop them straight into that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen as they occur to you. And what we'll do then is ask our presenters your questions when we get to the second half of the session. So don't wait, pop them in as you go, as those questions occur to you, and we'll get to them as soon as our little talks are done. So we'll have around 20 minutes for that chat and those Q&A. Please do make sure you use that time to have your questions answered. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce our speakers. I'm going to introduce them very briefly now to you, and then a little bit more detail as I throw to them and ask them to give a bit of a talk. So we've got Associate Professor Bradley Moggridge. He's a proud Murri from the Kamilaroi Nation, and he is living on Ngunnawal land, just like me. He's a researcher in Indigenous Water Science, and he's got a range of pretty cool positions associated with that. We've got Dr Katherine Locock, and she leads the drug discovery chemistry team in the manufacturing business unit of CSIRO, our national science agency. Katherine is based in Melbourne. And we're also welcoming today Kylie Forrest. She's an operations manager, or the operations manager for an Indigenous sunscreen company called Ochre Sun. And Kylie has a cultural connection to the Mandindangi people in southwest Queensland, but she's actually living on Gubbi Gubbi country on the Sunshine Coast. So please make them all welcome. I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we go. So firstly, we're very lucky to hear from Bradley Moggridge. Now, Brad is a member of the New South Wales Environmental Protection Authority. He's on the Biodiversity Council. He's part of the Wentworth Group of Concerned Scientists. He's a governor of the World Wildlife Fund of Australia, and he's the president of the Australian Freshwater Science Society. I don't know when you sleep, Bradley. I've also been really privileged to work with and learn from Bradley. He's very committed to supporting more people from Indigenous people from around the world to bring their knowledge together with the academic approach to science and knowledge systems to do new things in new ways. So Bradley, over to you.
Thanks, Kylie. I'll share my screen and hopefully it all goes to plan. All right. How's that? Is that working? Is that good?
You might need to just put it in presentation mode, Bradley.
Oh, change the...
Yeah, you've got lots of slides there.
Yeah. Display settings.
Try that.
That better?
All good.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, look, thanks, Kylie, and thanks for the Academy for the invitation to have a yarn. Yeah, look, I'll do a bit of a story. Bit of my journey, some tips and some challenges, I suppose. That photo there is Booba Lagoon, a very significant cultural place, and it has an awesome dreaming story, and a cultural hero that sits at the bottom is a crocodile-headed snake. So we don't go there after dark, hence why we try and protect it. Yeah, look, acknowledge, following on from Kylie, yeah, on Ngunnawal land. I grew up on Darug land in Western Sydney, so I'm a Westie. I grew up at Toongabbie and grew up on a small creek called Greystanes Creek, which flowed into Toongabbie Creek, which flows into the Parramatta River. So I had connections with water, even though that water sometimes was murky colours because it was downstream of industrial plants. So I don't know whether that made my hair fall out, I'm not sure. But the having connection to water was, I found, early. So, and look, the reason why I do what I do is the generations that have gone before me have paved the way, have sacrificed a lot, and I've been very privileged to, you know, get a good education and obviously then go on to university. And then obviously the other thing is making sure that there's, you know, I leave something for the next generation. So got 2 kids, boy and a girl, so I got the set, and Pure Science made them because they're both IVF. So I love that experience, seeing them in test tubes. The boy must have had a coarse test tube because he was quite a young, his nickname was Bruiser at the daycare. So I don't know what happened there. Look, yeah, the old photos and the old people of where I come from are exactly the reason why I'm sort of in this space. It's not a space that Indigenous people take on, especially science. But yeah, look, I'm keen for you to think about who you are and where you're from. You know, 250 years ago, if you weren't a member of that nation of where you live, you come from somewhere else, and have a think about your history. You know, I've looked into it, and unfortunately I don't own a castle in Scotland or anything exotic like that, but I have connection to one place, the Kamilaroi Nation in northwest New South Wales there, the bottom picture, and you'll see that that place is, connection for thousands and thousands of generations. And obviously, Moggridge is an old English name. I can go back to 1032 in Suffolk, England, but I think, that's through dad's side, obviously. And then there's also Benj and McGrady through my mum's side, and obviously the pictured Nan in the centre there, from northwest New South Wales. And so I connect to that country for thousands and thousands of years. So that's why I identify as a Kamilaroi man first. Look, as I said, I'm a scientist by training. So I did geology straight out of high school, and I found I loved learning about the earth, and found myself in the Great Sandy Desert in Western Australia looking for uranium in a national park, and that didn't sit nicely. And I come home and said, I'm changing, and I changed to environmental science and went through that process. And then I stuck with what's underground with regards to the geology, but I started looking at the water, so hydrogeology, the water that's underneath our feet, and flows through the earth like sponges. So that's why, I've stayed with the water theme, but also around from an environmental point of view. And then obviously I have walking in two worlds, thinking about the cultural stories that I have through my my old people. Unfortunately, I was encouraged not to do science or maths going from year 10 to year 11. I thought that I didn't win on the maths, but I was able to do geology and biology as the two sciences I could do. But and look, when I went to first year university, I had no idea what maths language they were talking, because I hadn't learnt it. I'd done a basic maths, and I didn't even study for the HSC because I thought I was smarter than that. And, it was a challenge. And until I got a tutor to try and learn this new language of maths, I didn't even know what calculus was going into science maths in first year uni. So, and then obviously we had the chemistries and the physics, which were completely different languages as well. So, but I got through those, and then there's a picture of me presenting at the Australian Academy of Science. So, there's I suppose an expression or a phrase or a facial movement that I could do to that science coordinator back in the day, and to you. So there I am presenting science at the Academy of Science. I finished the HSC, and I loved golf, and I thought about what should I do, and Mum said, get an education behind you because you could break a bone, and that could be the end of you. And you're sort of that fork in the road scenario. I decided to go down the university path, and that's me studying water quality. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I was testing water quality at the golf course, you could say. More me, sorry. I present about 70 times a year. I'm lucky to do keynotes. I've traveled overseas telling, some of my stories about connecting with some of the oldest water stories on the planet. I'm on expert panels. I'm on a couple of boards. I present at conferences, and I seem to say yes to everything. So as Kylie said, sleep seems to be overrated, but I think if I don't do it, no one else will. So it's really, there is a burden on especially Indigenous scientists to fill that void, but we have to, otherwise we get left behind. And, I'm keen to lead in this area of expertise, find commonalities walking in those two worlds between Aboriginal science or traditional science and Western science. And then the science is then built through validation opportunities and to influence policy, and especially the way we manage the Australian landscape and water from my perspective. So for me, what got me excited in water was looking at how to survive on the driest inhabited continent on Earth for 60,000+ years, surviving climate changes. So the stories from coastal communities of moving to higher country, they are the turn of the last ice age. So they're 7,000 to 10,000 years old, those stories. They're told and retold. So those observations and impacts from country are told and retold, and part of our validation of understanding country. And I believe our culture and our beliefs have evolved and adapted. We're still here, and we're surviving Australian policy as we speak. water is the core of who we are and what we connect to, as I'm sure you know, is without it you die. So it's pretty important. It's in our songs, it's in our dreaming stories, it's in our dances, and obviously when you look at a lot of Aboriginal art, you'll see water as a key part of, especially as you move into the drier parts of the country, you'll see water as a key part of those stories that are told through art. I'm keen to protect our cultural species. So these species are revered and obviously respected, and they're also in our stories and our dances. So the Brolga has a unbelievably cool dance. Google it, watch it on YouTube, and they have a really cool dance. And a lot of Aboriginal nations, if they're turning up to your water place, or your wetland, or your billabong, or your river system, then you've got water in the landscape at the right time. These birds come from all over the globe. So some come from Siberia. So, you know, they're well traveled, these birds, but they know when water's in the right place at the right time, especially, and we get the opportunity to watch them. And then obviously the wedge-tailed eagle, Aquila audax. If I ever go into witness protection, that'll be my alias. You know, they're top of the food chain, and obviously if they're happy and healthy, then we've got water in the right place. And these water landscapes, the wider wetlands where I'm doing a lot of my research, are key parts. You know, they were behind lock gates for about 180 years, and so we're just getting re-access to our country now. So it's been exciting to research on these parts of the landscape. This is a map that I found through my master's thesis, which had all these concentric circles on the back of a spear thrower, a wooden implement. And it was an old man working with an anthropologist, and each one of those water holes in the desert had its own name. So I suppose this old man knew his country like the back of his hand, and I suppose these water holes were significant. Something to consider: why do we not celebrate Aboriginal water knowledge? When you look at that map, you can sort of see, yeah, like there's a Murray-Darling Basin, the Lake Eyre Basin, and then as soon as you move into this central bit, it's dry country. So if you don't know where water is, you're not going to last long. Just some learnings: go to physics lecture instead of happy hour. That means half price drinks at university. For the younger ages, don't worry about that for a number of years. For the 11s and 12s, potentially, if you go to university, go to the physics lecture. Find mentors that work for you. You know, you've got to connect with your mentor. Don't be afraid to take risks. Build your networks. Networks are important. And I think it was definitely hard through COVID, but I think now that we're talking to other humans face to face, you've got to build your networks. Join professional societies. As Kylie mentioned, I'm the current president of the Australian Freshwater Science Society, and probably the only Indigenous person member of any scientific society in the land. So that's pretty cool. Think about social media, especially if you want a job in the future. Use it to your advantage. Choose your battles. Be wary of what you like and share. Be wary of your location statuses, and also who your friends are. Potentially, you know, when you go for jobs later in life, that's one of the things that people go through is your social media profile. And then, of course, if you win, celebrate it. And that's me as my beard grows through COVID. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brad. I wasn't going to comment on the beard, but I swear it's longer every time I see you. So I think next time I see you, you're going to be able to tuck it into your belt. But I found that really inspiring, Brad. Thank you, and a particularly powerful image is towards the end there, both of that map on the back of the spear thrower, and that more modern technologically enabled map. And really, wouldn't it be fascinating to be able to map the entire country the way that spear thrower map was drawn and lay those over the top? Something to aspire to perhaps in the future. But what a powerful story and a powerful connection between those two knowledge systems to solve problems and care for country and build connection. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Katherine Locock again. Katherine has worked extensively with First Nations groups over the past 10 years, but she is herself not Indigenous. And she places emphasis on an engagement that is First Nations or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander initiated or co-developed. She's a member of the Royal Australian Chemistry Institute. She has been a Tall Poppy of the Year. What a cool title is that? And she's also a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, which is an organisation for people who lead companies and provide that strategic oversight. So, Katherine, please share with us some of your learnings.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kylie. Let me just do the Zoom dance.
While you're doing that, I'm going to remind people to pop those questions into the Q&A box. Otherwise, you'll end up with the questions that I ask rather than the questions that you ask. Back to you, Katherine.
Excellent. Is that coming through okay?
We've still got the your view rather than the presentation view.
Better?
No. I don't know if you're able to click the slideshow down in the corner there.
Well, it's on slideshow for me.
Okay.
Let me
That's
try.
okay. We can see it.
Is that okay?
No, it's fine, Katherine. Why don't you just jump in?
All the animations. Okay, we'll work with it. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm on today, which are the Bunurong people down here in Clayton, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also to extend that to the elders from the lands that we're all dialing in on from today. I thought I'd start out really quickly with a bit of a story on what led me to be where I am today. So I was pretty science obsessed my whole life. I wanted to be a scientist, focused on maths, chemistry and physics in high school. Wasn't a huge fan of physics, I have to say, but found myself more drawn to the biology side of things. So when I went on to do my Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Sydney, I ended up majoring in chemistry, along with pharmacology, which is basically the study of medicines or drugs. So, brings in that biology side of things. I then stayed on to do a PhD in that area. And this was coming up with potential memory enhancers, as potential treatments for Alzheimer's disease down the track. And then towards the end of my PhD, I was lucky enough to be offered an associate lectureship within the department in pharmacology. And I jumped at it because I loved spending time with the students and teaching. I thought that would be a great opportunity. What I think I failed to recognise is that with those academic positions comes a lot of administration and teaching. And what happens is you don't have as much time as you need to do your research. And I really wanted to use my research as a way to make the world a better place. And so made a decision to actually transition to a research focused position. So took up a postdoc at the CSIRO down here in Melbourne. And in a completely different new area, I was working on polymers. So instead of drugs, I was now working on polymers, although they were antimicrobial. So still had a bit of that biology associated with it. Afterwards, stayed on to become a research scientist, later a senior research scientist. And over the last couple of years, stepped into leading the drug discovery team. And as of next month, I think, the botanical pharmaceuticals team. And for me, CSIRO was a great fit because you get exposed to a lot of different science, a lot of different types of research. And so I thought I'd give you a bit of a snapshot of the sorts of projects I've been involved in over the years. So worked to come up with potential new antibiotics, antivirals, anti-cancer agents. I did a couple of years worth of projects developing new paints with Dulux. Also, I could see the growing problem around plastic waste. We know that's a huge environmental burden. I was lucky enough to work on a few projects, both here in Australia, in partnership with some Indigenous rangers up north, around potential solutions to that problem. Also, over the last couple of years, been involved in the wave of research that was associated with medicinal cannabis and also psychedelics and mental health, which is a really interesting area. But the area I think that's closest to my heart and the one that I'm here today to talk about are around traditional medicines. So working in respectful partnership with our First Nations people, helping support the development of modern day products from their traditional medicine knowledge. And this will be the question. Are the animations working? Hopefully.
No, we can't see any animation.
Okay, so is it just a mess of everything on top of one another?
It's just a static slide with your story and all of the circles coming out from the projects you've worked on.
So that's not coming through now?
No.
Okay, this is going to be a bit difficult. Let me try one more time. Okay, if it doesn't work that time, there's nothing I can do.
No, I don't think it's going to work. Sorry, Katherine.
That's okay. So yeah, I might share an artwork through Nita at the end if I can, because that's important. So I guess so a lot of my work at the moment is around nature-inspired medicines, and so if we go back to early human history, we couldn't just go down to the pharmacy and pick up a medicine if we had some sort of infection. We would have to look to the plants and animals and other things that were around us. And so in fact, nature's been a really rich source of where we actually identify new medicines from. And our First Nations people have had a long, deep knowledge system around the native plants that can be used to treat different types of human health disorders. And so what my team tends to do is we'll have a First Nations business actually come to us with an idea that they've got a traditional medicine that they've got, that traditional knowledge about, and they want to work with that knowledge system, blending it in with our Western science approach, bringing the two together to actually develop modern day products. So in our lab, we'll work with, say, the plant material, work out how to extract out all the goodies from that plant, analyze the extract that we've made, and then work out all that information and then package that up and give it back to our First Nations client to help support them develop those medicines. And they could go on to develop complementary medicines for the market. They could go through the clinical trials process to get something as a registered medicine. Or as you'll hear today from Kylie, who's joining us, it'll be around sunscreens, skin health products, or cosmetics as well. And so really what my job is, bringing that First Nations traditional knowledge respectfully and allowing our First Nations people to remain in control of how that knowledge is used, and blending it with our Western science to bring together what I call true Australian innovation and walking that journey together to come up with products that are very innovative for the market and derive a lot of benefit back to those First Nations groups that we work with. And I'll probably leave it there and hand over to Kylie.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Katherine, and thanks for ploughing on. I'm sorry that your animation didn't work, but we'll see if we can make that work before the end of the session today. It looks like quite an important part of the story there, and I think really speaks to your focus on that genuine collaboration and an authentic and respectful approach. We saw in the picture there a picture of Okasan, and so it's actually pretty cool that we get to now have a quick chat with Kylie. Because you might remember from the beginning of the session that Kylie is the operations manager for that very company, Okasan, and she's got connections to the Mandandangi people in southwest Queensland, and she has a lot of experience in the higher education sector. She's delivered programs, she's looked after people, she's managed Indigenous education and school engagement and community engagement. So Kylie, we're very pleased that you were able to join us today, and I'll just hand over to you for your final reflection before we jump into the Q&A.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here, and I want to acknowledge everybody that's out there in the country that you are on today. I am on Gubbi Gubbi country here on the Sunshine Coast, and we also flow into the Yinarra people country as well. I've lived here for over 35 years, so I feel really connected here, but my traditional country, as mentioned, is Menandangi through my mother's line, a long matriarchal line, and that's out in Roma in southwest Queensland. So as mentioned, I am the operations manager of Ochre Sun. I've just come on board in recent months with Ochre Sun, which has been an absolute dream come true. I'm absolutely loving it. We are an innovative company. We have been around since 2018 when our founder and CEO, Alana Kennedy, launched the line. Originally, she'd launched with the vision of creating a men's skincare line. She had 10 plus years in the beauty and skincare sector, and she was seeing the start of a lot of products coming through which were using or claiming to use native botanicals that our people have been stewarding over, have used in healing and bush medicine and traditional practice for millennia. And, they were coming through from unknown origins, perhaps from overseas or treated harshly overseas, and were being put into skincare products here and internationally across the globe as well. And what Alana's vision is that she wanted to create a product that was sort of missing in the market at that time, which was for men. Initially, she put all her time and energy and effort into creating a three-step men's regime with the Indigenous native botanicals in the product. She went out to market and all the men came back and they said, we want the sunscreen that does everything. Now, Alana was really offended because at the time it was a moisturizer aftershave sunscreen altogether. But she listened to the market and pivoted and then ended up changing from Ochre Bloke to Ochre Sun. And that's where our sunscreen has come from. So we're not only a beautiful sun protection with our SPF 50, the 4 hours water resistancy, we're light, we're non-ghosting, but we are infused with two really special native botanicals, being the Kakadu plum and the sneezeweed. So, and please, I'm not from a STEM background, so don't ask me the botanical name. I cannot remember. I would need to refer to our flyer or our website. But, we've got these beautiful products and these beautiful botanicals, in our products, which, have all this special skin healing property and as well as the sun protection. And we know that skin cancer and melanoma in our country is just, at all-time high. So, I think that Alana and the vision of the company is really to bring a product to the market that is founded in traditional knowledge, authenticity, and here to care over all of our lovely clients who use the product and feel that health, the benefit that comes from thousands and thousands of years of traditional wisdom and knowledges. So it's been really special for me to come on board. We're actually partnering with CSIRO and Catherine's team, which has been an amazing experience so far. We're just kicking off and we're going in to explore some other botanicals that potentially we can use in our skincare line, which we're looking at launching a 5-step skincare line next year. So this, will be another phase and another step of growth, and a really important process and part of the process for us, and a big goal is actually to ensure an Indigenous supply chain. So we work really closely already with our aunties and uncles, our Indigenous suppliers and growers and farmers who steward over these plants and the country that they're growing on. And that's really important to us. And we want to just further strengthen that relationship and make sure that all of our people are actually getting a fair deal in the supply chain, and that the plants are being cared for and looked after in a really beautiful process, so that our clients and all of society who are using our products will actually get that flow-on benefit and effect. And it's, not going to be harshly treated with nasty chemicals and things like that. So, that's our ethos, that's our practice. It's important for us to give back to our community. And so happy to be here. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kylie, and thanks all of our speakers. Teachers, please do pop your questions in the chat. While we're waiting for you to do that, I want to raise a question that I've got, because I know that both Katherine and Bradley mentioned the fact that they weren't so engaged with or so great at science at high school. And I think this is a really interesting point, because I also loved, knowledge and have always remained curious about science, but I didn't do so well at science in high school, and now I'm the CEO of the Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. So I want to just kind of ask your thoughts really about how important it is to engage in high school, and maybe something a little bit around keeping your options open, because it can be kind of easy to decide to go down one of those well-worn paths when you start to think about what subjects you're studying in year 11 and 12, and then at uni or vet beyond that. Brad?
Yeah, I suppose I did like science, but I wasn't able to do it. That was sort of a school decision or a coordinated decision. So I hold them wholly responsible for setting me a challenge of becoming a scientist. So, yeah, look, I think I did have a love for science, and yeah, those sort of beginnings drove me to actually challenge that position. And 20 odd years to what is it since I left school? Yeah, it's too long. All those years ago, and yeah, I think I've had a pretty, I see, a successful impact in the career of science. Like science. I'm in the water space, but also heavily involved with biodiversity, threatened species, and also climate change at the moment. So I'm just on the eve of publishing a big report on Indigenous knowledge and values and voices missing from climate change. So that'll come out sometime this week, I reckon. Yeah. So I think, I think it's something. Yeah, having your options is important. Having an idea, going into year 11, you've got to start choosing your subjects that you think will get you towards university if you want to go down that pathway. An example is my son finished year 12 2 years ago. Just, they just come out of COVID. He got into university, but I don't think he wanted me lecturing him. So he deferred uni and did a certificate 3 in ecosystem and ecological management. Now he's got his dream job as a 19-year-old as an Indigenous ranger. So, there are options there, and you can choose your pathway. And I suppose you've got to choose the pathway that best fits and the one you enjoy and you're happy and you love. So, yeah, I think keep your options open.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Katherine, if you could time travel and talk to your high school self, what would you say?
I think just to trust in myself, because I think as a grown-up now, I've realized that if you go where the energy is and the love and the passion is, you'll get where you need to go. And I think I agonized a lot. Oh, am I doing the right subjects? Am I, but yeah, I think if you love science and you're naturally curious, stoke that fire, stoke that passion, and that'll take you where you've got to go, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Kylie, I've got a question for you here through the Q&A box. And Meredith wants to know if Ochre Sun is reef safe.
Yes, so it's not a claim that we can currently make and I would encourage you to go and have a look at our ingredients and check it out. So there have been at the beginning of the year a couple of changes in the approval over the reef safe claim that you can make. Sunscreen is through the TGA is a very restricted product, so we really have to be on point and careful. So we only make the claims that we are allowed to and can do, but it's not to say that there's anything nasty or untoward, but I would just encourage you to go and have a look at our ingredients. It's not something we can make right now, but yeah, go and check it out.
Thank you. So the theme today is technology and traditional knowledge, creative problem solving, connection and country. And we've heard some really inspiring stories about the way that traditional knowledge is being applied in a modern context. I'd be interested to know what each of you think about where this could go. What's the ideal world scenario in terms of how you would like to see traditional knowledge brought to life in the everyday?
I'll have a crack.
Thought you might have some opinion.
Oh, look, I suppose it's challenging the system, but also ensuring that everyone has access to, I suppose, the true history of Australia. So, like when I went to primary school and high school, there wasn't much Indigenous content in the curricula. So, I was lucky enough to go out on country with elders and uncles and aunties and, experience it for real, and then start learning about it in schools and looking at the two connections between the potential two knowledge systems. So the challenge is, one of my other things is, I've developed curricula for Indigenous knowledge, especially for water. I was part of a Uni of Melbourne team that helped build curricula for fire, water, and astronomy, and that curricula is on there. So really what it is teachers obviously sometimes aren't confident enough in teaching traditional knowledge, but I suppose if you develop curricula that is safe and is accessible to everyone, and it's a lot of information that's in the public domain, so it's not secret and sacred, and it'll give teachers confidence to teach it then, so to develop a lesson plan, you have all the tools there. So I suppose it's starting at a young age, making sure that knowledge is part of the curricula all the way from preschool and daycare all the way to university. And then the other challenge is prompting and pushing the academies of science around thinking that traditional knowledge is not fake, it's not fiction, it's not myth and legend. And I suppose it's building up our evidence to say that our knowledge is an understanding, and those thousands of generations of observation and connection to one's country is a science. We've tested country, we've replicated those experiments, and we're still here. So we've survived, and obviously those ways of thinking and connecting to country is not only learning by doing, but it's also being and knowing. And I suppose that's where we want to push society, the Australian society, is to learn to love Indigenous knowledge, that it's a celebration. It should be a celebration of knowledge that we don't get to see. We don't see ourselves, you think about having traditional knowledge in the curricula, and you have young Aboriginal kids that are too shy and don't see themselves fitting into the school system, but then they have subject matter that they can connect to, can be proud of, and deliver and lead and all that sort of stuff. That's my hope anyway. So I think it's there's a lot of hope there, and a lot of and I think that's why I've tried to infiltrate the system, is to try and bring it from the inside as well.
Yeah, and I know you are steadfast in your commitment to that, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to learn from you. We've got a question about some books. I've got a couple of series that I want to suggest, but panelists, if you've got some books that you would like to recommend for further reading, perhaps pop them into the chat there. Just make sure you pick that everyone can see it. For younger kids, the Deadly Science books are pretty great. And as you get a little bit older and your language skills grow, I'd recommend the First Knowledges series. And both of those you can find in bookshops or online. We do have a specific question for Bradley, and then we might ask Katherine to have another go at that animation before we wrap up. But Brad, one of the attendees has asked if you're able to explain how First Nations people used Casuarina to purify water and eradicate bacteria.
Yeah, that's a great question. I suppose it's not something that jumps at me as a plant species that was used traditionally by my mob. We have Casuarina, we call them Balar, and Balar is also number 2 in our counting strategy. So because they actually divert, and then they're also dioecious, so they have male and female bits to each species. So yeah, I'm not too sure on that reference. I haven't come across it, but I know water purification would have been a priority post-contact, because when you think about a lot of our river systems and our groundwater springs, they would have been pure. Some might have been high in salts and things like that, or naturally occurring minerals. And but I think, yeah, you know, when I think about water purification, I think about billabongs and wetlands as being, you know, the kidneys of our river system. So stripping toxins and nutrients to actually put better water that went into it back into the river. I know charcoal was used as a filter. So rock holes are rock holes that occur in sort of igneous and volcanic country, and rock holes form where water erodes out these spaces, and then the mob know where these rock holes are, and they actually cover them up to obviously protect from animal pollution and things like that. So other species I think about is like Typha orientalis. So the kumbungi is a good nutrient stripper, sometimes called a native weed because it's so prolific in its growth. It'll be flattened in a flood, and a couple of days later it'll be back standing up, and it has multiple uses. So tree trunk hollows are hollowed out to actually collect water, and they're in a landscape, potentially dry landscape, and they're mostly eucalypts that are used to collect water. Soaks in shallow rivers, in sort of dry riverbeds where underwater groundwater is close to the surface, and so you've actually got sand that's actually filtering that water, so it comes out a lot pure. So yeah, I'm not sure on the casuarina or ala casuarina. I think I got someone drilling next door, sorry.
That's okay. Not sure on the casuarina, but you've given us about 15 other ways to do it, so that's awesome. We are unfortunately out of time, so I'm just going to ask Katherine if you're able to show us that animation, and then we're going to wrap up and let people get on with their day. I know we could stay here and talk all day.
I've forwarded it on to the email address if someone internally can share it.
Okay. Terrific. Yeah. Are you able to do that? Okay, while we're waiting for Nita to get onto that, I just want to thank you all so much for coming together with us today and talking about your jobs and your journeys, and for the excellent discussion that we've been able to have today. And I also want to thank everybody in classrooms who've joined us around the country, and we really hope that you've found something from this session that you're able to take away that maybe has piqued your interest or left you inspired to do something a little bit differently, and hopefully to pursue some more knowledge around the way that traditional knowledge has or the know-how that traditional knowledge has given us and continues to give us today, as Brad said, through that very, very long multi-generational history of testing, applying, testing again, which really is the way that science is done. There are going to be more Shape Your Future sessions running this year, so do please consider joining us again to hear from some other spectacular STEM professionals, the people that we're lucky enough to be working with from day to day. We're going to send you a short feedback session survey at the end of the session, and I really would very much appreciate if you're able to contribute to that. That helps us make sure that we are able to shape these in a way that works for you. And you'll also receive, teachers, a worksheet so that you can explore the ideas that you've heard today a little bit further. All right, looks like Nita's ready with that animation.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
Thank you. And this is just really to sum up everything that we've been talking about today, which is about how we can bring together Western and traditional knowledge systems together. So this is a beautiful artwork done by one of our First Nation scientists, Maddie Fulton, just really reflecting how we can walk on a journey together with our First Nations people, blending together to derive more impact and benefit for all. That's it from me.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time at Shape Your Future. Thank you very much, speakers. It's been excellent.